chapter 7 evolution, and this is the 9th video. So in the previous video we had discussed what are the evidences for evolution. So there we have studied what are the paleontological evidences. Next, let us discuss the next type of evidence, that is the embryological evidences. So what do you mean by this term? So embryology is nothing but the study of development of an organism, starting from the egg stage to the adult stage of the organisms. So this branch of biology can also be called as the developmental biology, where you are studying the developmental stages. Okay. So when you compare the developmental stages of different sexually reproducing organisms, we can say that they show a similar pattern. Okay, the developmental pattern appears to be the same. So what do you infer by this? We can say that they all might have come from the same origin. They might be having a common origin. Okay, so let us see how it appears to be. So what are the main features in the developmental stages you can find in the embryo of different organisms, sexually reproducing organisms? You can see that each and every organism starts from a single cell, that is nothing but the zygote, right? It is called as the fertilized egg or the zygote. So any organism you see, we can say that the organism starts from a single cell, a diploid cell, that is zygote. Next, what is the next stage of development you can find? You can see that the zygote undergoes cleavage. What is cleavage, students? It is nothing but repeated mitotic divisions, right? So it undergoes cleavage and it gives rise to the blastula, which is called as blastulation. All this you might have you have studied it in human reproduction, right? So the zygote undergoes cleavage and then forms a hollow mass of cells, that is called as the blastula. So you know this process is nothing but blastulation. Later there is gastrulation taking place, right? That is nothing but it develops into a 3-layered gastrula, which is also called as the early embryo, right? So this gastrula, you know, it consists of there is formation of the germinal layers, that is forming the outer ectoderm, the middle mesoderm, and then there is the inner endoderm formed. So then you can find the initiation of the formation of 3 germinal layers. Yes, so when you find the embryos of all different vertebrates, look at this now. You can see that they all appear to be same, though they are unrelated organisms. So here you can see fishes, the salamander, here you have tortoise, chick, rabbit, man, that is might be the fishes or the reptiles or the aves or the mammals. Compare the embryos of all these organisms, you can see that initially they appear to be fish-like. Yes, so they are having gill slits, then gill clefts, gill slits, gill clefts are present, and they have the tail, students, right? Then also many other features you can see. Initially all they have 2-chambered heart in the circulatory system, that is resembling that of the fishes. So at this stage it is very difficult to distinguish the embryos of different vertebrates. Okay, so what we can conclude by seeing these similarities, we can say that all these organisms might have evolved from the same common ancestry or the same ancestral stock. So a scientist named Ernest Haeckel in 1861, so based on these evidences or based on these observations of the embryological stages, he gave out the biogenetic law. Now what is this biogenetic law? It states that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. I repeat, biogenetic law states that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. This is not given in your NCERT textbook, but they have mentioned about Ernest Haeckel. Remember that, students. Okay. So this is the actual what statement what he had given. It means that the developmental history of an organism, ontogeny means developmental history of an organism, repeats. Recapitulates means repeats. Phylogeny means ancestral history. Okay. So he said that the developmental history of an organism repeats its ancestral history. Got it? That means you can see that in the embryonic stages, what you had found all were appear to be the same, right? So that means all present organisms what we are having now, they show the ancestral structure of the ancestral organisms. Okay, so that was the biogenetic law. For example, another example I can give you of the tadpoles, that is the larva of amphibians, right? Like fish, frogs. So you know they just look like the fishes, right? They are having gills, fins, same like the fishes they appear. So this suggests that fish is the ancestor of amphibians. Amphibians have nothing but evolved from the fishes only. Okay, that is why they are repeating their structure. Okay, so that was the inference drawn by whom? Ernest Haeckel. Remember this. Okay, but students, this was also objected. Another scientist named Carl Ernst von Baer, he disapproved this biogenetic law, and he said that embryos never pass through the adult stages of other animals. Got it? Okay, there might be similarities, no doubt there might be similarities between their embryonic stages, but scientifically we cannot say that their embryonic stages pass through the stages of other organisms. This is not scientifically proved. Okay, so scientist von Baer, he completely rejected this theory given by Ernest Haeckel. Okay, so to some extent we can believe or we can draw the observations of this embryological evidences, but completely we cannot approve it. Okay, so this is about the embryological evidences. Next, coming to the comparative anatomy, that is by observing the internal structures of different organisms. Okay, what are the observations you can draw out? That is the anatomical evidences. What does these suggest? So when you observe, compare the structures of different groups of organisms together, when you start studying them and when you go on comparing them, what you can see there? So it is observed that they exhibit similarity. So what does this suggest? It indicates there is a common origin for these organisms. Okay, so that is by making the comparative study we can draw out the inference. Okay, so here this comparative anatomy can be studied under different headings such as homologous organs, analogous organs, vestigial organs, atavism and connecting link. So let us study one by one. What are homologous organs now? First one, I'll explain you taking an example. That is when you take the example of vertebrate forelimbs. See the structure of forelimbs of different vertebrates like humans, the forelimbs of cat, whale and bat. So see the structure of all these. You can see that all of these forelimbs, they have a single bone here in the upper arm. Upper arm is supported by a single bone which is called as the humerus. just recall the skeletal system what you had studied. This is called as the humerus. Then the lower arm is supported by two bones, that is the radius and the ulna. So all of these show two bones in the lower arm. Then next, the wrist is supported by carpals, a group of small bones, carpals. Then the palm consisting of metacarpals, and then the fingers or the digits are made up of phalanges. Got it? So when you see the structure of a forelimb in any of the vertebrate animals, which are the bones you can find there? Humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. So here you can see that all these vertebrate forelimbs have the same structure, right? So that means they suggest they are having a common origin. Okay, but what about the function of them? Are they used for the same purpose? No, students. So here humans use the forelimb for grasping the things, for gripping the objects. In cats, the forelimb is used for walking. In whales, it is used for swimming. Whereas in bat, it is used for flying. So what do you infer by this? The basic structure of the forelimbs is the same. Yes, but they are used for performing different functions in different animals. So how do we define or how do we state the homologous organs here? Those are nothing but the organs which are structurally similar but they are functionally different or dissimilar. So this helps in tracing the evolutionary relationship. How? By seeing the common structure, we can infer that yes, they might be having a common ancestry. And this also leads to divergent evolution. What is this divergent evolution, students? See, one example I can give you. Think there is one ancestral species present. It is present in one particular area. Okay. Later on, that one organism, the next generations of that organism, they start developing different structures depending upon their habitat wherever they are present. So like this, that leads to evolution of different structures in different organisms based on their environmental conditions. Then slowly that leads to the formation of new species. As new structures develop, that leads to new species. Okay, so that is nothing but divergent. That is, one is diverging into many. It is leading to the production of many different types of organisms. So this can also be called as adaptive radiation. So in detail about this adaptive radiation we are going to study later, students. So this is also one example what was given by Darwin to suggest the origin of life. Okay, so this is about homologous organs. So here adaptive radiation is nothing but formation of different structures from one common ancestry. So I'll explain this to you later in the next modules. Okay. So another example I can quote for explaining homologous organs, that is bougainvillea. This plant you might have seen in the gardens and all. They are just paper like flowers are present. So here you can see the stem is consisting of thorns. Stem is modified into thorns, right? So what is this thorns meant for? It is meant for protection. Then you have another plant specimen here, that is the cucurbita. So here you can see that the stem has developed coiled structures called as the tendrils. So now students, what are the tendrils meant for? They are meant for support. So when you see these two plants here, in both of them the stem is having some is modified into some structures, like in one it is thorns, in the other it is tendrils. But what is the common thing in both? Both are nothing but stem modifications. Yes, so we can say that the basic structure is same in both, that is both are stem modifications only, but they have adapted or modified for performing different functions. So what does this show? That they are homologous organs. Remember, homo means similar. What is similar? Origin is similar. So this you should remember, same origin but different functions. Got it? So coming to the next example here. Take the example of wings of bats, then birds and insects. So here the wings of bat, children, you have seen. So it is having the structure of a vertebrate forelimb. Also in the wings of the bird. Then compare them with the wings of an insect. So when you compare all these, in bat as well as in the bird, we can see that the wings are made up of bones. That is, they are nothing but they are having four-limb structure. But the thing is that in birds it is made up of feathers here, right? But in the insects, what you can see, the wings are nothing but just an extensions of the body, extensions or expansions of the exoskeleton, because you know the insects are invertebrates, they do not have the bony skeleton. Got it? But in all these, what you can see is that the wings, what are they used for? They are used for flight. Why they are used for flight? Because of the habitat to which they are adapted. Bats, they are also adapted for aerial mode of life. Birds are also adapted for aerial mode of life, whereas insects are also adapted for aerial mode of life. So for that, what they need wings to fly. So that is why, because of the habitat where they have adapted, they show the common structure, that is the wings. Okay, but is the origin same of the wings? No, the wings are, the structurally they are different. Got it? So what you can see here, the basic structure is different, but the function is similar. So here it is completely reversed what you had studied in the homologous organs, right? So what are these organs? They are nothing but analogous organs. So how can you explain them? Organs which are structurally dissimilar, but they are performing same function, functionally similar, are said to be analogous organs. So does this suggest that they have a common ancestry? No, it does not help in tracing out the relationship. Why? Because as the structures are completely different, we can say that yes, they do not show any common ancestry. They are completely two unrelated animals. Okay. But this leads to convergent evolution, students. What do you mean by the term convergent? Converge, come together. That is, because of the common habitat, they are performing same function. Okay, let us see another example in plants. The root tubers and the stem tubers. So as the name itself has been mentioned, this is root and this is stem. So they are two completely entirely different structures. Yes, but both are present underground, and what are both modified for? They are modified for the purpose of storage. So you know, sweet potatoes here, they are nothing but root modifications meant for storage. In the same way, potato, which is also called as a tuber, it is nothing but a stem modification also meant for storage. So here also, students, this is a root modification, whereas this is the stem modification. So the structure is completely different, but they are meant for same function. So we'll just summarize what is divergent evolution. Diverge, that is one common thing, one common organism it is diverging, that is, it is giving rise to different structures. Okay, so that is divergent evolution. So why it is giving rise to different structures? Because common species, when they diverge or when they go to different areas, to adapt to those different areas, they develop different structures. That is divergent evolution. Okay, so this suggests they have some common ancestry. Okay, whereas what is convergent evolution? So here convergent means two different organisms, when they come in one common area, when they come to one common habitat, they develop similar structures. Okay, they develop similar structures because of the habitat where they are present, right? So this shows that they are totally unrelated organisms, distinctly related organisms or unrelated organisms, but because of the common habitat where they are present, because of their common behavior, they have attained same structures. Got it? So this differences you should be knowing, students. What is divergent evolution and what is convergent evolution? Differentiate them. Or the differences between homologous and analogous organs, or for 2 or 3 marks they may ask you to define homologous and analogous organs with examples. So you have to explain the example also there. Okay, so other examples also we can quote, like eyes of octopus and mammals, which is analogous in nature, because you know octopus is an invertebrate which belongs to phylum Mollusca. Then mammals, they are vertebrates, but the eye structure of both octopus and mammals, those are totally unrelated organisms, they are completely different, but the eyes of octopus is similar to the mammal eye, students. So it is used for the same purpose. So this shows what? Analogous organs. Okay, so like this different examples you can quote, right? So next one, coming to the vestigial organs. So they are nothing but also called as the functionless organs. So you might observe some of the parts of our body, you know what are those parts used for different purposes, but there are certain parts in our body which we don't use it. Okay, so because of not using them, they have been reduced in our body. So such organs are said to be vestigial organs. So they are functionless organs or useless organs, and because of that they are reduced. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they are completely disappeared from our body. They continue to remain in the body. Okay, so they go on continuing in the next generations also. So in the process of evolution, they are going to continue in the next generations as well. Okay, so here, and why are we studying this vestigial organs? How does it help in tracing out the evolutionary history? So here we can see that these organs were actually used by the ancestral organisms, or in some other organisms they might be performing some function. Okay, they might be useful, they may be distinct, but we are not using it. That means what? It is present in all the organisms. For example, when you take two different organisms, A and B, A is using it for different purposes, but B is not using it. They are present in different habitats. So this suggests that both are having that same structure, but one is using, the other one is not using, depending upon their needs. So as that structure is present in both the organisms, this suggests that they have a common ancestry. Okay, so I can give you some examples also for this, that is to suggest the evolutionary line. So some examples of vestigial organs in humans, if you take vermiform appendix, you might have heard of the coccyx or the tail vertebrae, then the wisdom teeth. Okay, so let us see one by one. Vermiform appendix. So what is this, students? Vermiform appendix. You might have heard appendix, or we call it as commonly. It is a finger-like extension present at the junction of the small and large intestine. Okay, so this is actually functionless. In humans, it is not used for any purpose. It is present in humans, no doubt it is present. It is very reduced in humans, present at the junction of the small and the large intestine, but it is not used for any purposes. But in the other herbivorous animals, okay, in herbivorous animals, it is used for cellulose digestion. So as you all know, herbivorous animals, they completely feed on the plant products, so which is mainly cellulose. So to digest that cellulose, they are continuously used there, right? So it is being used in the other animals, but as it is not used by the humans, it is highly reduced. In the same way, tail vertebrae, so it is nothing but the reduced tail part which is present in humans. Okay, so in human beings, you can see that when you observe the vertebral column, there is a small pointed structure you find at the end. So it is nothing but the reduced tail vertebra. This is the tail vertebra in the humans, and it is highly reduced. Why? Because it is non-functional. Humans have not used the tail. This shows that the previous ancestors of us, they were having the tail, but as the usage of it lessened, reduced, then slowly that part, it became functionless and it became reduced in the present day organisms. Okay, so but in the other animals, if you see, you can see that they have a long tail vertebra, right? In the same way, the wisdom tooth in humans, wisdom teeth is nothing but the last molars. So it is also highly reduced and non-functional. In humans, we don't use it for any purposes. Whereas when you compare it with the other carnivorous animals, the flesh-eating animals like dogs, cats, you can see they are completely developed, right? So thus we can infer that if one organ can undergo changes, there is every possibility that the other organs also, they have gone undergoing changes from one species to other species, right? So here these all examples what I gave you about the vestigial organs separately, they have not been mentioned in your NCERT. So this is for your understanding and it is for your competitives also. Okay, next coming to atavism. What is atavism? This also term, they have not mentioned it particularly as atavism, students, but they have given you that some, they have been mentioned a sentence that sometimes there might be reappearance of ancestral characters. Okay, the term has not been mentioned. So what is atavism? It is sudden reappearance of ancestral characters which had completely disappeared or reduced. So just now as I told you about the what tails, right? So tail vertebrate is highly reduced in the humans. Why? We are not using them. But sometimes in some humans, suddenly during the developmental stages, so in some humans you might find the tail might have been developed here, right? So this is nothing but the sudden reappearance of ancestral character. So by seeing this new character in one organism, so we can say that so there is here a sudden appearance of a small tail in the baby, right? So this shows that yes, our ancestors might be having the tail, so that is why this baby has developed it. Okay, so this is nothing but called as atavism. Got it? Another such I can give you is dense body hair growth. So you know our ancestors, we say that we have come from apes and they had the body completely covered with fur. So slowly it reduced and we have reduced hair growth on the body, right? So some humans, they may develop a dense thick hair on the body. So that also suggests the atavism, that is appearance of an ancestral character. Then the last one we have connecting link. So one connecting link I had told you, that is about the Archaeopteryx. Yes, so many such connecting links we have, which are nothing but the intermediate stages or the transitional stages between two groups of organisms. Okay, so here they possess structures which are common to both the groups of organisms, so they are called as connecting links. They are also called as missing links. Got it? Why they are called as missing links, students? Because they are not completely that side, or they are not completely another different organism. They are combination of both. So example we can give here, Euglena. So Euglena, you know, it is a unicellular protozoan. So we say that it is a connecting link between plants and animals. Why? Because it shows a plant-like character. What is a plant-like character? That is presence of chloroplast. They are photosynthetic in nature, as well as they have flagella. So flagella is meant for locomotion, right? So animals, they are locomote. So we can say it is a connecting link between the two. Okay. So hope you have understood that part. Next, coming to the molecular evidences. Okay. So in that comparative anatomy, students, remember there the most asked is the homologous and the analogous organs. Okay, with examples. Also in the competitives, they may give you some examples where they may ask you what type of evidence they suggest. Okay, so next, coming to the molecular evidences. So here, what does this molecular evidences suggest? So molecular evidences, in the sense at the molecular level in all the living organisms, we can say that it consists of same basic chemicals. Okay, such as it might be the nucleic acids, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids. Okay, so why is this similarity seen? Because the origin of protobiont, it took place around millions of years back, and you have studied how did this take place. It is mainly because of chemical evolution. You have studied, right, Oparin and Haldane's theory. So we can say that as the chemicals have evolved into the living forms, the same chemicals have continued in all the living organisms. So starting from the initial basic level, the cell. So you know that any living organism you take, we can say it is made up of the basic structural and functional unit, that is nothing but the cell. Yes or no? You have also studied cell, it is the defining character of living organisms. Yes? Okay. So any organisms you take, they show the presence of all the cellular components like endoplasmic reticulum, the mitochondria might be present, the Golgi bodies are present, right? So all of them, they show this protoplasm or the living component. So also you find similarities in the proteins and genes among different organisms. Okay, so the common proteins might be present among them, such as the trypsin, insulin, okay, and the genetic constitution also of these organisms. So when you compare with the proteins and the genetic constitution of the humans and the DNA of the chimpanzees, you can see that there is similarity in the DNA, mitochondrial DNA of both of these organisms. So that suggests a common ancestry of them. Then also in the genetic code, so you know that all the organisms, they show the genetic code which is triplet, and it is universal in nature. That suggests that all living organisms have come from a common ancestry. Okay, then the basic processes in the organisms, like the reactions taking place in the body, It might be the synthesis of proteins, the nucleic acids. You know, all the organisms are made up of two types of nucleic acids, that is DNA and RNA. Okay, then the metabolic processes taking place like respiration, circulation, neural transmission. So all these, and another important one is the ATP, which forms the energy currency of all living organisms. Okay, so all this suggests that they have a common ancestry. So this is about the evidences for evolution. Students, hope you have understood the concept. Read the NCERT textbook once and make make points by studying the NCERT as well as watching the video. So then make the separate points which are required for the competitive exams and make separate notes for the theory purpose. Okay, so in the next module we'll continue with some other examples which suggest or which show the evidences for evolution. Okay, so thank you once again.